On July 20th, 1969, NASA took what's often called humanity's greatest step by sending a spacecraft to the moon. But after the Apollo missions ended in 1972, no one has set foot on the lunar surface since. It's almost like we couldn't go back. So why is it that despite all our incredible technological advancements, humans haven't returned to the moon? And here's something else. Did you know that from the very beginning, we've only ever seen one side of the moon? There's a whole mysterious region, the far side, that's still hidden from us Earth dwellers. Recently, India tried to explore that dark side by sending a spacecraft. They got so close to landing, but at the last moment, the craft crashed, leaving the moon's shadowy secrets a mystery once again. Let's dive into this in today's video. Even though the moon is the closest celestial body to us, uncovering its history and mysteries is way harder than you'd think. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to hit that like button. The moon, or as some call it, Luna, is a familiar sight to all of us. But like I said, even though it's so close, it might just be hiding the universe's biggest secrets. We know the universe kicked off about 13 billion years ago with the Big Bang, but how the moon came to be, that's still a puzzle we haven't fully cracked. Scientists have thrown around a bunch of theories over the years. The first widely accepted idea was that the moon was some wandering object from space that got caught in Earth's gravitational pull and started orbiting us. But basic physics proved that theory wrong, so it got tossed out. Then, about 20 years ago, a stronger concept popped up, one that's still holding strong today. It suggests that in Earth's early days, a massive planet-sized object smashed into us. The collision blasted off a chunk of Earth's outer layer, and over time, gravity shaped that debris into the moon as it orbited us. That's the gist of it. But here's where it gets weird. If the moon formed naturally like this, why does it show such unnatural behaviors? Let's start with solar eclipses. We all know an eclipse happens when the moon blocks the sun. But have you ever stopped to think how perfectly the moon covers the sun, not even a decimal point off? How did it just happen to align so precisely? The odds of this happening naturally are insanely low. Here's another mind blower. The sun's diameter is 400 times bigger than the moon's. And by some crazy coincidence, the distance from the sun to the moon is also about 400 times the distance from the moon to Earth. That's why they look the same size in our sky, and why we get those perfect solar eclipses. For an eclipse to work, the moon has to orbit in just the right path across the sun. The chances of that lining up so flawlessly by pure luck, slim to none. Let's break it down even more. For a total solar eclipse to happen, the moon has to be exactly 2,160 miles across. Not 2,161, not 2,159, but 2,160 precisely. All these factors coming together naturally. That's a tough sell. It's almost too perfect. Here's another wild fact. Scientists say there's no other moon in our galaxy that has a relationship with its planet quite like Earth and the moon. Compared to most planets and their moons, ours are unusually close. And get this, the moon's orbit around Earth is the most perfectly circular one we've found in our solar system. Plus, it has a bigger impact on Earth than any other moon does on its planet. If the moon weren't here, Earth's axis would wobble way more than it does now. Without that stability, we might not even have seasons. Scientists say the moon's influence is a huge reason life thrives here. It's tied to the tides, the rhythms of nature, pretty much everything that keeps Earth humming along. Without it, life as we know it might not exist. So, with all this in mind, here's where the conversation takes a turn. Some researchers believe the moon might actually be an artificial creation, something built and placed here on purpose. Looking at everything we've talked about and what's still to come, you might start wondering if something this bizarre could really form on its own. Landing on the moon was called humanity's greatest triumph, but some folks still argue it was all staged in a Hollywood studio. They point to odd details as proof. Beyond that, the first Apollo mission in 1969 supposedly gave us a huge chunk of lunar history. During that trip, the astronauts' radio transmissions with mission control were broadcast live to the public. But then, out of nowhere, there's a 2-minute gap in the audio. Investigators got suspicious, and when you hear the start of it, you might too have private radio channels for medical updates. During this gap, it seems they switched to one of those, cutting off the main feed. In that conversation, they reportedly saw something, a white object, and hinted at a nearby craft or structure in a crater. The 3 astronauts from that first landing, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin, came back to Earth acting strange. You'd expect them to be over the moon after such a historic win, but their faces showed stress and disappointment. Did they see something they couldn't tell the world about? NASA hasn't sent anyone back to the moon since 1972. Neither has the USSR or any other space agency, even though they had the tech and know-how. Were they warned off by someone or something? We'll dig into that more later. If you're into world history mysteries like this, don't forget to subscribe. The moon's surface is covered in craters of all sizes. Scientists say it's because there's no atmosphere to burn up incoming objects and no wind or water to smooth things out, so those impact scars stay pristine forever. But here's the weird part. Despite their different sizes, all these craters are the same depth. Normally, the size of an impact should affect how deep the crater is, right? That's not the case here. And it's got people scratching their heads. Plus, the craters are super wide and have this convex, almost raised center. Unlike what you'd expect from a typical impact, it's like there's a tough layer just under the surface, stopping anything from punching through too deep. For that to happen, the moon would need a super strong inner structure, stronger than its mass suggests it should have. One wild theory: the moon might be hollow, like a giant shell. Some mainstream scientists reject this because it challenges everything we know about physics. But if they accepted it, they'd have to admit the moon could be an artificial object. Here's a crazy moment that fuels this idea. On November 20th, 1969, during Apollo 12, the lunar module took off from the moon's surface. When its rocket booster detached and crashed back down, something bizarre happened. The impact triggered a seismic event, and the moon rang like a bell for over an hour. NASA was stunned. They tested it again with Apollo 13, crashing an even bigger object. This time, the moon vibrated for nearly 3 hours, with waves spreading 20 miles across the surface. No one saw that coming. To this day, no one's fully explained why it happened. That's where the hollow moon theory gains traction. The moon's outer layer is made of basalt, a light rock that absorbs impacts well. But if the whole surface is just basalt, it shouldn't ring like that. Physics can't quite square it, which is why some dismiss the idea outright. Then, in July 1970, 2 Soviet scientists from Moscow, Maxwell Vasilyev and Alexei Ansarkov, dropped a bombshell paper. After years of lunar research, they claimed the moon is an artificial object, crafted by an advanced civilization and placed in orbit around Earth. Their work caused a global stir. Building on the hollow moon idea and other strong evidence, they argued it's too perfect to be natural. As government scientists, their claims carried weight. They had to have some solid proof. They estimated the moon's crust is about 2.5 miles thick. NASA's tests found elements like chromium, titanium, and zirconium in the soil, stuff that could shield against cosmic rays, temperature swings, and impacts. Vasilyev and Ansarkov suggested this points to the moon being a massive spacecraft, maybe with an engine inside, coated in a synthetic shell. It's a stretch to believe, sure, but their evidence was compelling enough that researchers worldwide couldn't just brush it off. Some even backed them up. They also pointed to ancient myths. Certain legends say there was a time when the moon wasn't in the sky. Some old stories even describe it as an artificial object placed there. The Soviet duo's theory lined up with these tales, making it harder to dismiss. So, here's the big mystery. Is the moon a giant spaceship? Was it parked here by an advanced species to study Earth, or, as some myths suggest, to seed life here? Researchers are split. I'll dive deeper into that in a separate video. For now, the moon keeps glowing in our night sky, hiding its secrets. If you want more mysteries like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell. We'll catch up again soon.